So, the other day we ranked all 32 special illustration rares from Prismatic Evolutions, and it got me thinking about all the very wonderful artworks that we've received over the course of the Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, and Scarlet and Violet eras. Whether it was illustration rares, tag team cards, alternate art cards, whatever. For the most part, I would say we, but I'll say I. I've enjoyed almost everything we've received. But I was thinking about this, about how many cards have just been given to us that they're so easy to forget, right? Because what do we remember? We remember the cards that have sold for the most money, right? We know we've got the alternate art Giratina, the alt art Lugia, almost every evolution in Evolving Skies. But what I wanted to focus on today was I wanted to talk about the alternate art cards from Sword and Shield era that don't have that $100 price tag, right? So in this video, we are going to rank the top 10, my top 10 alternate art V cards from the Sword and Shield era. And yes, I did have to cap this or else it would just be, number 1, alternate art Aerodactyl, number 2, the alternate art Lugia, number 3, so on and so forth, right? Like, just the obvious answer. So this is capped at a $100 value for these cards, but let's get into it. My honorable mention right out the gate is the Rapid Strike Urshifu V card. Absolutely adore this card. Somebody did argue with me the other day saying that it's not technically an alternate art. It is a full art card with alternate art theme, I guess. So that's why I wanted to make it an honorable mention. The card's only worth a market price of, I think, $15. So what does it really matter? It's still a great artwork, and if you want it for 15 bucks, I think that's a great buy, right? I love the fact that it's floating. The blurriness of the background really heightens the actual Pokemon in the center frame. The stance is super cool. All in all, definitely my honorable mention, but breaking into the top 10, I've got the Mew V alternate art from Fusion Strike with a market price of $80.69. I do think that this is one of the better artworks from the Sword and Shield era. However, I'm not the biggest fan of this card, right? I like the incorporation of the other Pokemon, and I like the incorporation of Mew being in the middle of the frame, right? Being surrounded by Pokemon, just because it's a very fun-loving Pokemon, and it loves to transform and mess around with other Pokemon and just be involved. So I do think it embodies everything that Mew is, but I guess I'm just not a big fan of the artwork style. However, it still being number 10, it is still one of the better artworks from the Sword and Shield era. But beating it out just by a leg, we've got the Celebi V from Fusion Strike. I know you guys are probably going to yell at me right now for it being so low on this list. The Celebi is a gorgeous card. It is. The artwork style is great. The way they depict Celebi is awesome. It's just not one of my favorites. It feels kind of bland, and I feel like the price has reflected that a little bit, because it's not that card that's worth $200 or $300, right? Its current market price is around $60, and there have been people that have been wanting to buy multiple copies, and it still hasn't shot through the roof, right? So I feel like other people would agree with me when they say something is holding this card back. As to what that is, I couldn't tell you to be exact. And the same thing goes for our next entry on this list, and that is the Noivern V alternate art from Evolving Skies. I love this Batman-themed Pokemon, looking like it's jumping to the rescue or jumping to conduct an act of evil. I don't know. I'm not going to assume. I didn't draw the artwork, but I do think it's really cool. I like the incorporation of the dark in the background and the lights shining onto its wings. I wish we saw a different artwork that showed like the bat signal in the sky as, Noivern is coming down right on top. Kind of how they did the, Charizard and Mew V-Star cards, where you see both angles of that battle. But to each their own. I'm not going to say that, that card's going to, shoot up in price. If we were to have it, it would probably be, roughly the same. I'd say another $20 to $30 card. But the Noivern V alternate art does have a market price of about 40 bucks. And for me, it is one of the standout V artworks from the entire Sword and Shield era. It's very simple, it gets straight to the point, and it's a very interesting and eye-catching artwork. As compared to the next entry on this list, which is Rotom V alternate art. This is a chaotic artwork. It's interesting because it seems that they didn't want to put a focus on Rotom itself. They wanted to put a focus on really the room that it was in, right? Very chaotic, and the color scheme matches what it looks like it's radiating off its body, right? It's a reddish Pokemon with a reddish background. I think it's super interesting. It is personally one of my favorite. Actually, I do run a alternate art copy in all my decks in the TCG, and that's just because I was lucky enough to pull a couple of them, and I did buy some other ones. But actually, I have it right here. Yeah, I actually run this copy in the majority of my decks. So to me, it is one of my favorite artworks, and with a market price of $33, I do still think it's a great pickup, right? I don't know if it'll get more expensive or cheaper after this rotation because it'll no longer be in use, so people won't be buying it as much to use to go to tournaments. But who knows? You know, I still think it's a great card to pick up, especially at that price, because the Sword and Shield era is booming right now, which is half the reason why we're making this video. Let's not miss out on an era that is so close to us and still cards are so readily available, if not at the prices that we want them to be at. And coming in at number 6 on this list, we have the Origin Form Palkia V. Again, this is another very chaotic artwork, and I like how they match the art style of the Pokemon to the background, right? In a lot of these depictions, they don't really do that. Either the Pokemon looks hyper realistic with a not so realish background, or everything about it looks surreal, right? The Palkia kind of just looks cartoonish, and I enjoy that about it. And with it being the Pokemon of space, I just think it really works, right? Again, it's another very accurate depiction of the type of Pokemon that it's in, because I know it's making sense of what it's looking at, but for me, I could not find my way through there with a map and a compass, so it doesn't really matter. But coming in at number 5, I have Hisuian Sneasler. Guys, I'm gonna be honest with you, I know a couple of you are like, wow, this should be like number 9, number 10. There's no way the Mew and Celebi is worse than this card. I like this card, and part of the reason is because my wife likes this card, so all right, work with me here. No, but yeah, my wife really does like this card, and I have to agree with her, and it's mostly because of the background, right? It's because they have the interaction of the Pokemon so close, and it's the depth at which the artwork depicts. I like the cliff. I like the cliff inclusion, and I like how the Pokemon's hanging on the cliff. Super cool way to depict that Pokemon in action. And that background is just too gorgeous not to ignore, you know? So that's kind of the win for me, mostly because of the wife. But no, I'm gonna be honest, it is a really, really cool artwork, and it's only got a market price of $25. So yeah, another great pickup. Following Hisuian Sneasler, I have one of my favorite alternate art cards from the Sword and Shield era, and that is Empoleon V. Again, I am a huge fan of illustration rares or alternate art cards that incorporate other Pokemon, right? So thinking about Empoleon, who growing up when I played the games, I didn't really think about it as, you know, that fighting Pokemon, right? It was a steel and water type, and I think it's still one of the only steel and water type Pokemon in the entire franchise. I thought it was super unique. I thought the crown was super awesome, and it did remind me of like if Pokemon were to make like a penguin ninja, you know? So seeing this depiction, I was like, yeah, this is actually really neat. I really enjoy this card, and I enjoy the Mienfoo in the background, you know, and it mimicking the moves. So all in all, I think it's a super cute artwork. I think it's been underrated since Battle Styles came out, and everybody that ever said that it's a terrible artwork or they don't like it, I just think you're wrong. I think it's a very wonderful artwork, and I think you guys should buy it, especially with a market price of $45. So I'm going to buy more copies, and I'm going to keep buying more. It's probably going to be one of those cards that I hoard just because it's so readily available still. And following that is another artwork that is truly one of the best Pokemon artworks out there. Just something that I would actually put on a poster and keep in my room, right? Not even thinking that it is a Pokemon, and that's Lumineon V alternate art. This card, market price of $15, a gorgeous card. And again, I know I just said this about the Empoleon, but I'm going to say it again for the Lumineon. These next 3 artworks are just cards that I am still buying copies of constantly, because I think maybe one day, I hope one day people wake up and realize like, wow, that is a really good price for that card, or that is a really good artwork. And Lumineon is really playable right now in the TCG, even though the format is about to rotate. So we'll see. Maybe the price does shoot way up, or maybe the price goes down. I couldn't tell you guys. I'm not a witch or a wizard. I can't predict stuff like that. But it would be really cool to see that this Pokemon gets its time in the spotlight and people realize like, man, $15 is super cheap for an alt art as good as that, especially when Brilliant Stars, really its heavy hitters come from the Rainbow Charizard and the alternate art Charizard and the Trainer Gallery. So hopefully Lumineon does get its time in the spotlight. But following Lumineon, we do have my number 2 entry on this list, and that is Galarian Articuno from Chilling Reign. I don't understand how people hate this card, and I don't understand how the majority of cards in Chilling Reign didn't get the same like price treatment as the evolutions from Evolving Skies. I mean, I do, right? Because again, it's evolutions versus Pokemon that people just don't really enjoy, right? But when you think about it, Galarian Articuno has a market price of roughly $60. $60, right? And the Moltres is at what, 150 or something crazy? Like, in my opinion, the Moltres is really cool, but that Galarian Articuno is gorgeous. I do like the kind of aura circle around the Articuno. I do like it in motion of wrapping itself. It's a honestly top tier artwork for me. If I were to make, you know, my top 10 favorite artworks in general from the Sword and Shield, I mean, I would have to say this is either close to being in my top 10 or it's an honorable mention, but it's just a very, very gorgeous artwork. And again, it's another artwork that I'm picking up multiple copies of, right? Like the idea is if I don't want to spend 40 to 60 bucks on opening an ETB, I want a for sure thing. I want a for sure copy in my hand. I'm going to pick up some raw cards and I'm going to pick up a raw copy of the Galarian Articuno or our number one spot, the Zera Aura V alternate art from Chilling Reign. This is my number one favorite artwork, favorite V alt from the Sword and Shield era, under $100. And if I made a top 10 list, it'd probably be in the top 10. Probably wouldn't be an honorable mention. It'd probably be like 7 or 8. Like, this is one of the best artworks. The background, the card just feels surreal, right? I feel like it's very appropriate. And there's not a lot going on in the background. You know what I mean? It's basically a blanket of snow. But the two buildings that are incorporated in the background with Zera Aura just kind of standing up there, aura farming, you know? I think it's a really, really neat artwork, and I think it's something that, again, is kind of not desired by the majority of the community, which makes it super desirable for me. Like, it's something I enjoy, and it's something that I will continue to buy. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Just a quick one. Wanted to talk to y'all about some really nice artworks. I don't want y'all to forget about other price opportunities out there as far as, you know, spending 40 to 60 to 100 bucks on ETBs and not getting a sure thing. You know, ripping packs is fun, but sometimes building up your binder collection is also just as cool. So hope you guys have a very wonderful day. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.